For 5 years now, Steel Vengeance has been thrilling guests at Cedar Point and is a super well-acclaimed coaster. It's constantly been voted one of the best rides in the world, and still reigns as my favorite roller coaster. However, coaster enthusiasts have been calling the ride overrated recently, so is Steel Vengeance really overrated? Why is it my favorite roller coaster still? Here's my full review of America's wildest roller coaster, Steel Vengeance. Announced in 2017, Steel Vengeance is the RMC makeover of Mean Streak, the old Din wooden coaster that corrupted Cedar Point's Frontier Town. Steel Vengeance is Cedar Point's prized jewel, their masterpiece. It looms at the very back of the park and is absolutely massive when you're standing next to it. It offers basically everything a roller coaster can. Walking up to the ride, you may be confused with the theme. Basically, there were 3 outlaws of Frontier Town who all have beef with Maverick next door. There is Digger, who lost his arm from Maverick's mining company. There's Wild One Chess, another one of the bandits, and their leader, Blackjack, Maverick's rival. They wanted to reclaim the mining company and take control of Frontier Town, and Steel Vengeance was their way of reclaiming the town. And it worked, as Steel Vengeance consistently has longer lines than Maverick in the park. And it looks much more intimidating. Walking up, seeing the ride twisting above you and the massive sign in front is a great first impression. The queue line takes place right inside the structure and can really scare first-time riders. After the cattle pins, the queue goes into the structure and goes into the annoying locker system. Basically, the lockers are free, but you have to get out of line and jump back in, and the mandatory metal detectors can really slow down the system. It can still be 20 minutes before you get on the ride after the lockers. After climbing up the stairs and waiting in the station, you'll board one of 3 trains, each themed to one of the outlaws. Also, for 2023, they finally added station music, and it's my personal favorite in the park. It's even playing in the background of this video. It's an enjoyable Western theme song. Now let's get into the actual ride layout and some categories. After departing from the station, riders take a right-hand turn and go into 2 bunny hills, providing the first 2 pops of airtime in a total of 27.2 seconds, the most in the world. Let me tell you, after experiencing this ride, even in the morning, you feel all of that airtime. And all of it is powerful. There isn't a single part of this ride that isn't ejector or flowjector airtime. The train hits the obnoxious before ascending 205 feet into the air. This lift hill is pretty slow. It really builds up the anticipation of that first drop. From off the ride, this hill looks even bigger because of the massive wooden structure. Diving down the first drop, the front row gets a nice hanging sensation while the back row gets absolutely yanked down in an awesome ejector moment. And for all of those people saying Steel Vengeance isn't an intense ride, these first couple of elements disprove that. After a super quick airtime jolt, riders enter one of the craziest sustained ejector airtime moments. Steel Vengeance rockets up a top hat element, providing 5 seconds of sustained ejector airtime, with a violent lateral jolt to the left in the middle of the descent. Riders are thrown up and then to the side of their seats. In the back seats, it's completely unexpected. Following is another sustained ejector moment through maybe the most iconic element of the ride, a massive outer banked turn. It is a super weird sensation, but Steel Vengeance isn't done yet. In fact, it's just getting started. The train rises up into a quick airtime pop before going through a wild upward 0G roll. Going through the structure with head choppers while upside down is a super cool sensation. I sometimes look different directions during this inversion, and it always feels very different from any other inversion. Following is a pretty weak overbank, but it is followed by a super crazy 0G stall through the structure. This whole inversion is descending, so those in the back seats will feel the increase in speed while upside down. And even though the transitions looks like it could cause whiplash, there's actually no jolt or anything. Now flying the other direction, the train descends through a super fast double up into one of the whippier moments of the ride. A rise up leads into a super surprising turn, which then rises into the mid-course. Now there are some unfortunate trims that you can feel in the back seat, but they are only on about half the time, and at night they are almost never on, and that is when the ride feels the fastest. Something to note, however, in May and June, the notorious mayflies come out by the lake, so in the front row at night is basically a death sentence. But that could add to the insanity of that second half, which starts with a drop full of extreme head choppers. Rising up from under the structure, the train enters a double up, providing some extremely powerful airtime before entering my previous favorite element of the ride, a twisted airtime hill. What makes this hill special, however, is that the descent is much larger than the ascent, and it dives into the structure. In the back seat, no one can see the head choppers coming, and it is a pretty scary moment. Afterward, however, is really the only other part of the ride that doesn't do a whole lot for me, and it's literally 2 seconds of the ride. That really shows how crazy this coaster is. It's this quick overbank turn, and it just feels like a normal turn. However, my favorite element is up next, and this is a super quick 0G roll. This one is especially crazy because it feels like a normal airtime hill, but you can see the wooden structure and the whole world spinning around you. It's super dizzying and cool. Following are two back-to-back airtime hills, and you can tell these are just filler elements, but they are still super strong elements. The second one weirdly has a hidden jolt to the left, so make sure you brace for that in any row, as it can really throw you to the side. There is another jolt coming up that could be jarring if not braced for, but this is the main one. After the sideways airtime moment through the structure, the fourth inversion hits, and this is like the third inversion but much slower, causing a brief moment of hang time. Following is that jolt I mentioned, which can really throw your neck to the left, as it is an unbanked transition into another overbank, this one providing some wacky hang time. Finally, Steel Vengeance enters its incredible finale, 6 back-to-back airtime hills, each getting progressively closer together until there is barely a breath in between airtime moments. It's an awesome way to end an incredible coaster. Now let's get into the categories. Our first category is the drop, and the drop on Steel Vengeance is fantastic. It stands at 205 feet tall and it feels like it lasts forever. Those in the front row get an awesome hanging sensation and some good floater airtime, and those in the back seat get a super powerful dose of ejector airtime. The drop gets a solid 8 out of 10. It's not the best drop ever, but it is very good. Airtime is up next, and of course Steel Vengeance will be receiving a perfect 10 out of 10. After all, Steel Vengeance is literally the most airtime out of any coaster in the world. The first half is full of huge hills with sustained ejector airtime, and as the ride loses speed, the hills get tighter and tighter, allowing for short bursts of super powerful ejector airtime. Mixed with lateral forces on some of the hills, especially the first two, Steel Vengeance airtime is the best on the planet. Contrary to popular belief, I think that Steel Vengeance's pacing is very good, especially compared to other RMCs like Wicked Cyclone. Even though the ride clearly loses speed in the second half, it doesn't really feel like it because the elements get tighter and tighter as the ride goes. Additionally, the head choppers are all a blur, so it makes it feel a lot faster. Steel Vengeance gets a 9 out of 10 for pacing. The transitions on Steel Vengeance are also near perfect, receiving a 9 out of 10. The main problems come from the unexpected jolts, mainly the two in the second half. They can be very uncomfortable if you're in a bad position, especially because they're right after some pretty floaty elements. However, most transitions are flawless. Those twisted airtime hills and bunny hops, especially the turn into the mid-course and the one diving into the structure, and all of the inversions have great transitions. Speaking of which, inversions also get a 9 out of 10. While there wasn't a drawn-out stall or inversions to the caliber of Wildcat's Revenge, Steel Vengeance's inversions are as good as they can be. The upwards roll and downward stall are incredibly unique, and those two 0G rolls in the second half of the ride are some of the best inversions I've ever experienced. And finally, we have the reason Steel Vengeance doesn't get praised by the community anymore, the intensity. But to me, I think Steel Vengeance is an extremely intense ride. Early in the morning when most people ride it, obviously it's not going to be as intense, but in the evening or night, especially after a rain shower, Steel Vengeance hauls. The most intense parts are the lateral jolts, especially the one after the top hat, but some valleys are very tight, most notably right before and after the mid-course brake run. Some of the overbanks too have some pretty strong laterals. Is it like Intimidator 305 or even Wildcat's Revenge? No, but it's still deserving of a 9 out of 10. So my overall thoughts on Steel Vengeance should be pretty obvious. This is my favorite coaster and it has been for 6 years now, since it opened. I rode it on the earliest day possible, the Frontier Hoedown day, and it still has never dropped from its spot. The pacing is near perfect, the elements are absolutely insane on every ride, especially in the back row at night. The back right at night is the best coaster experience I think in the US and maybe even the world. You really have to experience it for yourself. Is it really overrated? Honestly, no. When the ride first opened, it was everyone's number one, and I think the hype really killed it. However, go ride this for yourself and tell me it doesn't blow you away. In fact, the hype died down so much that Steel Vengeance is almost underrated now. Some people even believe Maverick is better, but I disagree. The only ride in the US that I believe could top Steel Vengeance is Iron Gwazi, but even that might be a stretch. The length and the airtime of Steel Vengeance make it what looks to be more well-rounded than Iron Gwazi. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Steel Vengeance, and make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Have a great rest of your day.